Good afternoon, Mr. President. For more than a year now, I have come to the Senate floor on a pretty regular basis. And one of our colleagues who's sitting over here, I think he's your relief to preside, has heard me come here and talk about some of the great work that's being done by the men and women, some of the 225,000 men and women who work for us at the Department of Homeland Security. And as you know, Mr. President, the Department of Homeland Security is made up of some 22 component agencies, has more than 220,000 employees all over the world. And these men and women perform some of the toughest jobs in the federal workforce, from stopping drugs from crossing our borders to protecting our cyber networks from hackers to securing nuclear and radiological materials. The Department of Homeland Security has a diverse, they've got a complex, and frankly got a difficult mission. They have a really tough mission. And in fact, they have a lot of really tough missions. Each and every day, tens of thousands of Department of Homeland Security employees work quietly. They work diligently behind the scenes to achieve those missions, which at their core are helping to keep over 300 million of us in this country safe as we go about our daily lives. One of the smaller teams within the Department of Homeland Security, one that punches above its weight, though, is called the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office. Let me say that again. It's not one that we've heard of very much. It's called the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office. And as you might imagine, we have got an acronym for them. And it's called DNDO. And I'm not going to use that acronym today, because I don't like acronyms, especially ones that are rarely used. But the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office has a staff of only 125 people. 125 people out of 220,000 that make up DHS. But they are responsible for keeping all of us safe from the threats posed by radiological and nuclear materials. Now, from tracking known radioactive materials, Mr. President, to supplying detection equipment to federal, to state, and to local law enforcement, to conducting research and building better detection technologies. The men and women at this office play an integral role in our nation's effort to, one, detect radiological materials, and two, to keep them from falling into the wrong hands. To my left, we're going to see very shortly some images of just a few of the technologies that are used at this agency, and also a few of the employees who work there as they try to detect and track some of the most dangerous materials that are known to mankind. On the top half of this poster, we'll see a couple of images. One is a field agent who's using mobile detectors mounted on a Jeep to determine if a substance is radioactive or not. The other shows radiation portal monitors. And these are right over here. Some of you have been to a border crossing between this country and others. We'll see these, and you'll see them, frankly, in some of our ports too. But the second image is the mobile detection monitors, the radiation portal monitors. These tall yellow posts that are stationed at the ports of entry and exits, and can passively scan. They can scan cars, they can scan trucks, they can even scan shipping containers as they pass through between those tall yellow posts at our borders. The men and women at the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office are charged with detecting and reporting unauthorized attempts to import, possess, to store, develop, and transport nuclear or radiological material. They rely heavily on strong partnerships with local, with state, and with federal and tribal law enforcement to achieve this mission. They act as a force multipliers. They equip thousands on the front lines with the resources and with the knowledge that they need to protect our communities from nuclear and from radiological threats. One of the individuals who takes on this task every day is a fellow named Brian Kuleski. And as an operational support program analyst, Brian oversees detection operations in 8 states and 1 U.S. territory. Brian Kuleski makes sure that the first responders have the training to coordinate and carry out detection operations, whether at a major event or a sudden emergency. And through regular training, exercises, and strategic planning, Brian Koleski gives our first responders the tools that they need to protect some of the most valuable, some of the most vulnerable areas from threats of nuclear materials. Before joining the Department of Homeland Security, Brian worked at the Florida Department of Transportation as a state police officer. In that role, he was supporting efforts to detect and track radiological materials throughout his state. He conducted radiological and nuclear detection operations at over 18 large-scale events, including the 2009 Super Bowl, the 2008 World Series, and the 2008 Republican Governors Conference. Throughout Brian's career, he's earned the respect of his colleagues and is recognized as an authority on radiological and nuclear detection. And through his thoughtful leadership, I'm told, and a little bit of humor along the way, Brian has helped federal agencies, he's helped state and local enforcement work together as one team to protect against terrorist attacks. To Brian, you and your team, we want to say a really big thank you today and every day. And while Brian and his team are hard at work tracking nuclear material and stopping it before it enters our borders, others within the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office are working to track the sources of these materials so they can cut off the pipeline before it becomes a threat here in the United States. When Brian or anyone in the federal government detects and confiscates nuclear materials, they are delivered to the National Technical Nuclear Forensic Center at this agency. The experts there use advanced technologies to break down and analyze the origins of nuclear and radiological materials. Now, in the bottom half of these images to my left, you can see some of the sophisticated technologies, and these two frames right here. See, we can see some of the sophisticated technologies that we need to analyze the materials and track their sources. And by the way, operating these state-of-the-art scientific equipment and instruments requires years of training and years of education. With the right information, employees of this office can track material to their source, find out who produced those materials, and arrest the criminals who buy or sell or transport them. This is an essential part of our efforts to keep nuclear and radiological materials away from terrorists who we know would like to use them in an attack against our country. One domestic nuclear detection office employee charged with making sure that we are the best in the world at tracing the origins of nuclear material is Emily Zatoun. Emily Zatoun. Emily serves as a program analyst with the National Technical Nuclear Forensic Center, overseeing 9 universities and national laboratory initiatives. Emily is responsible for hiring the best and the brightest in the field of nuclear forensics. And since 2008, Emily has hired 42 PhDs onto our nuclear forensics workforce. These individuals work every day to improve our technologies and to help us track down the sources of these dangerous materials. And her continued work will ensure that we continue to attract and retain some of the top scientists in the world. Partnering with our detection experts in the field like Brian and his team, the forensics experts hired by Emily help state and local law enforcement track down and bring to justice those who seek to traffic nuclear material and sell it to criminals and to terrorists. Without Emily's efforts to keep our technology and expertise moving in the right direction, detection experts in the field like Brian and countless first responders and law enforcement personnel across our country would have a lot more material to track and a much harder job ensuring the safety of our communities. Emily's colleagues describe her as the ultimate team player. She works tirelessly to bring together government agencies and the academic community to make sure we're the best in the world at tracking nuclear material. She is intently focused on maintaining our abilities and reaching the goals set for her program, knowing that failure to reach them will make it much more difficult for Brian to achieve his goals. It is to our benefit as a country that many say Emily rarely takes no for an answer. Both Brian and Emily are the ultimate team players. With just 125 employees, the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office where they work can't be everywhere at once. It requires everyone, federal agencies, state and local law enforcement, emergency planners, and even the academic and scientific community. And together we can do more with less, continuously improving our training and equipment and staying one giant leap ahead of the bad guys who seek to use these materials to harm Americans here at home. So to Brian, to Emily, to all the folks with whom they work at the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office, and to everyone around the country who helps detect and track nuclear and radiological materials, we want to thank each of you. We want to thank the members of your team, and we want to thank you for coming together to keep the rest of us safe. To all of you, we say thanks and God bless.